This is Keys to the Shop, episode 323, reflecting on 5 years of Keys to the Shop. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris Deferio. I'm your host for the show. Thank you so much for choosing to listen to Keys to the Shop. I really appreciate it. And I would really encourage you to subscribe to Keys to the Shop. All you need to do is hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and you'll be updated automatically with new episodes as they come out. Shift breaks on Thursdays, main episodes on Tuesdays. We've got the Rate of Rise series, as well as the Founder Fridays. There's a lot of great content, so stay updated by subscribing, and also be sure to share these episodes with a friend or with your coworkers as well. And, if you have the opportunity, if you love what Keys to the Shop does and want to drop a rating or review over at Apple Podcasts, that would be awesome as well. Now, Keys to the Shop has been nominated as a finalist for the 13th Annual Sprudgie Awards, and that is in the category of Best Coffee Podcast, alongside of some really great coffee podcasts. And I would really love if you would vote for Keys to the Shop. Thank you so much to those of you who have nominated the show, and you can find the link in the show notes to vote for that, but you can just go to sprudge.com/vote and then fill out all the other categories too. Best notable roasters, a producer, best coffee writing, etc. There's a lot of great categories and awesome people there. So it's an honor to be among great people, and also thank you to you great people for nominating Keys to the Shop for the 13th Annual Sprudgies. Now, Keys to the Shop, on top of doing this podcast, also serves the community of coffee by offering consulting and coaching. That's for if you're starting a coffee shop and you need guidance on how to build a great foundation for success, or if you already have a coffee shop, an existing business that you want to take to the next level, or you have some areas of it that you really want to have looked at, some problem solving, things like that. There's a lot of ways that Keys to the Shop can work with you remotely or even in person on site to help you do just that. So if you want to set up a free exploratory call with me, we can hop on the call and see if working with Keys to the Shop is right for you. Simply email me, chris@keystotheshop.com. Again, if you're looking for clarity, guidance, and getting to the next level in your coffee business, go ahead and email me. Let's have a conversation. chris@keystotheshop.com. Now, today's episode of Keys to the Shop is brought to you by the Ground Control Cyclops Brewer from Voga Coffee. The award-winning technology in this brewer allows you to extract a range of flavors from your coffee that is just unheard of. And with such control, it's like getting to know your coffee all over again. It's revolutionizing what we can expect from batch brewers. And I'm not trying to just use language that it makes it sound great. It is great. And I've tasted the difference. Anybody who has got coffee from one of these machines knows it's just the next level of batch brewing. But it's not just a quality upgrade in batch brew coffee. It's also versatile in that it creates batched iced lattes, batch cold brew, and all of this in a well-designed, beautiful to look at package, small footprint, easy to train your staff on. Check them out over at groundcontrol.coffee for more information. If you're looking to level up your quality, get more versatility from your equipment, and truly offer your customers the best coffee possible, then I highly recommend you look into getting a Ground Control Cyclops brewer in your shop. Again, for more information, go to groundcontrol.coffee. Today's episode of Keys to the Shop is also brought to you by the Pacific Barista Series, the line of plant-based performance beverages that are basically the standard for excellence in plant-based beverages the world over. The Barista Series is made for and tested by some of the world's best baristas. You know that this product is going to perform on the bar so well. It stands up to the steaming process. It creates foam that is perfect for latte art. And also, it keeps the balance of the beverage's taste focused on the coffee. Go to pacificfoodservice.com to learn more and get this in your store and try it for yourself. If you want to serve the best in plant-based beverages, then you need to be using the Barista Series from Pacific. Okay, everybody. Well, guess what? Keys to the Shop is 5 years old. As of, yesterday, the third. Okay, I had a brief little car talk with everybody in my car. You could see the video up on Instagram, but we wanted to do an episode that was a little bit more official in celebrating Keys to the Shop being 5 years old. Somewhere around 560 episodes, closing in on 2 million downloads. It's really cool to have, come this far. And today, the tables are turned yet again on me, where I am being interviewed by my wife, Lynnsy Deferio. I'm sitting on the other side of my desk, my usual seat. She is sitting on the interviewer's chair, which is just a chair, but is officially the interviewer's chair. But yeah, today's episode is going to be sort of a retrospective of what's happened over the past 5 years, some questions about, ups and downs and challenges, successes, little bits of information about my own experience in running this podcast for 5 years. And then we get to hear also from my wife as well about her experience watching all of this unfold. And so I hope that you enjoy hearing about kind of the behind the scenes stuff of Keys to the Shop. We share some personal stories and information, and I think it's really cool that she wanted to do this. Of course, she is my biggest supporter, and actually, I think she's pretty great at being on the microphone. So I hope you think so too. And with that, let's get right to this conversation. Here now is my wife interviewing me about 5 years of Keys to the Shop. All right, well, I am back, but on the other side of my desk, literally on the other side of my desk, from the woman I love, my wife, Lynnsy Deferio. I would say welcome, but since you're kind of the host, maybe you should say welcome to Keys to the Shop, Chris.
Yes, I should. Welcome to Keys to the Shop. Again, I am hosting. If any of you listening have listened for a long time, you may have been introduced to me when we did our Valentine's episode a couple years ago. And I will report that after that episode, you said that was the most
it was commented on by people the most, or one of the more commented on episodes.
Yes, yeah. And I would love to believe that it's because I was such a great host, but it probably really is because people love hearing personal stories about you. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to that one, he shares just the best coffee stories that he has had over the past 20 years. Plus you get to hear how we met. So it's kind of fun. Anyway, today we are going to put him in the hot seat again. And I came up with a whole bunch of questions, so we will just see how it goes. Okay? Are you sweating a little bit?
Maybe, but not maybe because of this. I think the sun's coming in the window, so.
I'm actually sitting in his chair, and he is just sitting on the other side on a stool. Yeah. So, okay, the first question. Oh, I forgot to say, the whole reason why we're doing this is because it's his 5th year in podcasting. He's been doing this for 5 years. I can't even believe it. And I remember the first time he told me, and I literally looked at him like he was crazy, because back then I didn't even really know what podcasting was. I thought it was something to do with radio, but I had no clue. I wasn't listening to any, although now I'm kind of a junkie of podcasting, listening. But I just thought he was crazy. Like, what do you even mean? And I was expecting, okay, maybe you have ideas for maybe 10 episodes, but I'm just shocked how he never runs out of ideas. So anyway, we're going to talk more about stuff like that. So my first question is, just talk about the process of why you wanted to start a podcast. Like, what gave you the idea? Why did you think it was a good fit for you?
Yeah. So first of all, the idea of, being crazy for starting a podcast, it highlights to me sort of an interesting idea that, is familiar with something as I or anybody else can be, right? There are hosts of people that don't know about that thing. I mean, we all know that's true about coffee. And we have customers that are just brand new to coffee, and we've been spending so many years in coffee. We're like, how do you not know about this? And so it's like, not knowing about podcasting is kind of one of those things. Like, you've got your life. It's a rich life. It's a good life,
right.
And now it's richer through podcasts, I guess, depending on which ones you listen to. But yeah, I just think that was an interesting side note. But to the question, I started it because I felt like it was many years since I had done anything publicly in coffee. I had been in competitions. I had, I was still going to Coffee Fest as a trainer or speaker and judge. But I had spent up at that point, I think it was 18 years when I started the podcast, somewhere around there, in specialty coffee. And when you spend that much time in a place, you end up thinking about, what have I learned? And then you can't really articulate it that well. I'm a verbal processor. I like to think about things. I like to speak about them while I think about them. And I felt like, I need to contribute something. I need a creative outlet, and I need to provide something that I'm frustrated doesn't exist in coffee right now, which in that moment was a very practical podcast that addressed the inner workings of coffee bars and cafes that, I really like going to, and that's what I do for a living, working in coffee bars. But to be successful in a coffee bar, you gotta think about more than just tasty coffee. You got to think about the nuances of all the other, operational concerns and people concerns. And I just wanted something that I could tune into and be like, man, that's something that I can use in my job when I get out of my car or go into work. That's what I wanted, and so that's what I did.
Who has been an inspiration, though? Like, surely you were probably listening to podcasts prior to this,
right? So, I'm Dave Stachowiak was the main influence on me, who runs the Coaching for Leaders podcast, like #1 management and leadership podcasts in the world, actually. And I was it was a fanboy moment where I met Dave because, I was in Anaheim for Coffee Fest, and I know he's from the Orange County, California. And so I reached out as a listener, and he invited me to, get a slice of pizza. And I met with him, and it was great. And then we've struck up a friendship ever since, and he's helped me with, my podcast, and I consider him a friend. And that was really interesting to, again, to draw another lesson from a life event. When you meet people that you admire, one of the blessings of it is that you get to see what's possible for you too, because they're just people that decided to do something. And when I decided to do podcasting, I knew the plans that I had. I was going to do this. I told you I was going to do this for the rest of my life, as long as I could, right? I did. I wasn't going to do it. I remember I said, this is something, if I do it, I'm just going to keep doing it until I'm like physically unable to keep doing it.
Maybe that's why I thought you were crazy.
It's very possible. But Dave was a big influence on me, in particular, to give me the idea to do that. So.
All right. So, most of your listeners don't know you personally. And I just kind of want to speak to how you're wired and your, creative. And just a little side note, I myself am an artist, and I'm a painter and illustrator, and I've done that, for over 30 years. And my entire life, people have always told me how creative I am. And so when people tell you something over and over, you believe it. So I thought I was, until I met my husband, because I've never met someone who is more creatively diverse as him. I always tell him he is like the idea man. He never runs out of ideas. He just has, I don't know what it is, but it makes me feel like I'm not really that creative by comparison. Wow. I know it's different, but anyway, I just am always so impressed. Like if I were to start a podcast, I probably would just have 10 listeners and run out of subjects after 5 episodes. So anyway.
Well, real quick, that's what almost every podcaster thinks when they start a podcast.
Oh, really? Really?
It's like, what am I going to do? I've got these, and these are cool. But, when it comes time for these to not be there, like, what do I, like?
What do you talk about?
Yeah. And so, yeah. But I appreciate the compliment. But at the same time, I think it's different kinds of creativity.
Sure.
It might just be a crossed wire in my brain. It's not to say all the ideas are good. So, yeah, creative, but also, yeah.
It's more hits than miss. Anyway, on that note, just kind of share the background of how you've organized it in terms of how shift breaks came to be, Founder Fridays. You have a few different things floating around in there.
Well, okay, so the idea of ideas is that you think that they have some relevance to the world around you, right? That for the podcast was the impetus for the podcast was the idea that this would be helpful for other people. And central to that idea is that if it would be helpful for me, it would be helpful for other people. And at first that sounds kind of like self-centered in a sense, until you realize that we hold more in common than we do that's different. As people. And so, yeah, it's a leap of faith to start something and then to put an idea out there to see if people resonate with it. But more often than not, like I said, we find the similarities in that our intuition is right. And so this whole process over the past 5 years has been about building the muscle of, or even rediscovering the muscle of intuition in you might call it wisdom. Some people might call it gut feelings or intuition wisdom. But initially it seems like foolishness when you start it. So to answer your question, at first I was thinking, oh, you know what? I need to do a podcast with very practical information where I say, this bullet point list of things that people can use in their lives professionally. And that was every Tuesday. I wanted to do a weekly show. It was going to be about, I thought maybe 45 minutes to an hour. We've kind of vacillated back and forth between those two things. But I had an interview with the owners of Cafe Soleil in Syracuse, New York, actually friends of mine, and their interview was great. But what I didn't do, which was my rule for myself, was keep it like super maybe militaristically, like, what is your advice here? What is your advice there? And instead, what it turned out to be was their entrepreneur story. And story, to me at the time, seemed like, I don't want people to get like, there's no meat here. There's no practical application. So I was over-focused on what I imagined Keys to the Shop to be. I mean, it was like, how many keys do we have here for Keys to the Shop, right? So I was worried about the episode. I was like, is this really true to what Keys to the Shop is? But then one of those moments happened again. The first one was starting the podcast, and the second one was Founder Friday, which was, I'm going to create a category of Keys to the Shop that is on purpose veering away from the idea that it has to be this like prescriptive bullet point list of things that you should do for success or whatever, and make it more story based. And I mean, like I said, it was a great interview and people loved it. And so it became an institution because of, just thinking I need to find a space for this because it's good enough to have a space, but I don't want to go against what I wanted for the show. It turns out what I wanted for the show and what the show wanted were two different things.
Right.
And what people wanted, I would say, the audience.
Yes. Okay. And then what about the shift breaks?
Yeah, the same kind of thing, except this time it was just a thought of I have thoughts that are not like really hour-long thoughts, right? And they're just little bits of information and things that I think are valuable. And I remember driving around here, and we live on the south end of Louisville, and I was just driving around some parks and stuff thinking about this. And I made a note in my phone to do shift break, and I thought of the idea this is something you could listen to when you're on your break from a shift in your coffee shop. And, depending on your coffee shop, it doesn't tend to be very quick or very long. Rather, right. So practical information delivered quickly and just started doing it. And when I started it, I thought, there's no harm in trying. Just put it out there. There's no harm in trying. Our former guest on the show recently, Lynnsy Williams of Barista Life LA, was saying the same thing. Basically, just, being courageous, like by putting yourself out there, and then at the same time being open to listen to people as you do that, so that you can kind of have a foot in both worlds. Like, don't be insecure, but also don't be prideful at the same time.
Right. I actually had a similar conversation with our son about that today. Anyway, going back to your podcast episodes, how many do you have now? Do you know the number?
I think it's technically 560.
Okay, if you can think through 560
yeah,
briefly.
Yeah.
Who would you say is your most surprising guest in terms of just how well you enjoyed the banter or the direction that the podcast, episode went?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. First of all, it's an unfair question.
I know.
And
there's been so many.
There's been so many, so I don't want to offend anybody, but based on how you phrased your question, because I could say things like, man, it was so good to talk to James Hoffman, which it was. Mm-hmm. And I enjoy talking to James Hoffman because, we got philosophical, we tackled hard questions, and that was really fun to do. I enjoyed talking with David Schomer because he was like one of my coffee idols when I was coming up in coffee, and I actually interviewed him with a tape recorder back in 2002 or 3 or something like that in his shop when I was just getting started in coffee, and it was like a full circle moment. So that was really cool too. And I realized that, I'm not answering your question directly, but I will actually answer your question directly. I would say Andrew Sinclair of MadLab Coffee in LA was, I think, one of the most surprising to me because his personality was so huge and the passion for his community and his baristas and what he did was palpable, and the just kind of stuff that we talked about in the episode we could have talked about for a very long time. I mean, it ranged from practical applications for future entrepreneurs to impassioned pleas to the industry for progress in certain areas. And I just really loved that conversation because he just did not hold back. And there is, again, every conversation has a lot of like gold nuggets in it, right? But that one I felt was so timely, and it reached, I think, into a lot of people's hearts. Similarly, in terms of surprising things that have resulted from Keys to the Shop, and I would say just things I'm grateful for. I got to meet Steven Zinnerman of The Coffee Enthusiast, just kind of a chance encounter at Coffee Fest in a on-the-floor interview. We just had him on the show again, and his company, TCE, the Coffee Enthusiast Coffee, is, growing and both in influence and size, and it's just great to have been able to build that relationship. So out of 560 episodes, I mean, that's maybe some of the ones that are freshest in my mind or I think stand out. I love getting to know coffee from an international perspective too. So some of the Founder Fridays that we've done internationally have been really fun as well. So yeah, I guess I would talk for a long time on this. So let's move on to something else because we'll be here all day.
I know, there's so many. Thinking through, the maybe technical side of podcasting or just the nuts and bolts, what has happened that has been like a super disappointment?
A lot of people know that I have done a couple of episodes that have been before and after episodes where I talk to somebody who's getting ready to start a coffee bar and ask them questions like, what do you think it's going to be like? What have you done to get ready? And, all that stuff. A lot of like, what if, and what do you think questions. And so then we stop the interview about 30 minutes in, and then the second half is about 4 months after they've opened, where now we get to ask them, well, what happened? Like, what do you think? Was it everything you thought it was going to be? And those are really fun. A friend of mine, Cabell Tice, Orchard Coffee in Waynesville, North Carolina, had an episode of the before he opened section of that episode. And it was recorded as far as I knew, but then it just disappeared. I've never had that happen before, never had it happen after, but it was heartbreaking because I really liked the conversation and we didn't get the after episode, and it just, I must have deleted it accidentally in like a SD card purging session, but I don't know. That was pretty disappointing. And what's also a little bit disappointing is when I have a guest who has very little time, and their time is very precious, and then something happens where we have to reschedule and we don't reschedule.
That would be
it gets
disappointing.
Postponed like indefinitely. I think that's happened twice. And then the other thing is just realizing that there is audio quality issues. I mean, it sounds really silly, but when you're interviewing somebody, you've got questions you want to ask them, but you want to listen to their answers and ask questions that are intuitive and follow-up questions. And at the same time, you're monitoring their voice levels. You're paying attention for anything that could, violate the airspace or something, And sometimes it's just brutal, and it's hard to focus. It's really disappointing because I'm like, what they have to share is being, kind of ruined by this audio quality. So that's kind of a ever-present worry. But that thing with Cabell and losing his episode was, ugh. I don't ever want to have that happen again.
I remember that. It was so sad.
Yeah.
All right. What about thinking about yourself? What do you feel like you've learned about yourself as a direct result of starting this podcast?
I think one of the things is that I have a lot more compassion for people and their situations and stories and contexts. And when I say compassion, I mean like entering into dialogue not with a fix-it attitude necessarily, but with the greater ability to listen, not just ask questions. That's become easier, but what's changed about me and how I've grown, I think, is that the questions are more genuine and not prescriptive questions that are just like, well, these are the 6 interview questions you should ask guests on your podcast. It's more from a genuine place of curiosity and wanting to know about that thing, but then also listening to what people have to say and trying to hear what they're saying but not saying at the same time. That's something that you do as a consultant is a lot, to kind of dig beneath the surface of the given answer to root causes and things like that. Giving guests the platform to get deeper into their own thoughts. it's huge. A lot of people who do Founder Friday episodes will talk about, off air, how they haven't really spent that long, and it's only an hour. Mm-hmm. Okay. They haven't really sat down to spend that time ever to go through their history in such a way. So the interview itself is not only something that blesses those who are listening to it, but those who are partaking in it, I think it's my role to allow it to bless them as well by providing that insight that they give themselves through exploring their story. And I'm a lot more focused in on people's stories now, and I think my ability to listen has improved. And so, yeah, I think that's probably one thing.
Yeah, it's probably very therapeutic for them. Mm-hmm. That's great. So what challenge have you faced that you are proud that you've been able to overcome?
Well, so I guess it'll make me sound old to say that I threw my back out, but I did. And I did maybe like 3 years ago in such a bad way that I couldn't get up off the couch for 5 days. I had to be on steroids. I had bad reaction to that. I had to go to ER. And it was just a big thing. And, guess what? I've got a podcast, and I'm serious about it. And maybe it's just an obsessive personality type of trait of mine, because I used to like collect things a lot, and I, want to, do certain things a certain way, right? And I don't want to miss an episode. So I remember having to sit in the chair you're sitting in right now, mm-hmm. holding myself up. I was holding myself up by my hands, like so my butt wasn't touching the chair, just like so my back would stretch out, so I wasn't in excruciating pain, but so I was only in mild excruciating pain, right?
Right.
If that's kind of an oxymoron, but whatever. Interviewing somebody, and I was like sweating because I was in pain. I couldn't focus, and it turned out to be fine. You could search the podcast to not figure out which episode it was.
Right. No one would ever know.
No. I'm not going to tell you either. So
it was a while ago.
Yeah. But the point is that I felt like I overcame some kind of like physical, and I'm not saying that's what everybody should do, but for me, I was like, no, darn it, I have to do this. Like, this person's counting on me. My audience is counting on me. And if you really got stripped of all of that meaningful stuff, right, and you had to just discipline yourself, I got sponsors, mm-hmm. But that's not what the driving thing was. It was just like, no, I'm going to do this. And eventually, I'm better now. My back is better. But once you overcome some stuff like that in your career too, I've worked some really crappy jobs, the back of a trash truck, cleaning up a rodeo once, and a bunch of like odd type of things like that. Once you go through grimy, hard situations, you build your resilience. And I felt like part of my history in work and life had prepared me to like have this, thrown out back and painful conversation that turned out okay. So yeah, I guess podcasting wise, that's a achievement.
Yeah, that was such a sad period. But I feel like it's similar to pregnancy for me, because remember when I was pregnant, I was working as a barista, side by side my husband.
That's right.
And I was so sick that I felt like I was a week away from dying. It was the weirdest thing. No one else has ever described this type of pregnancy sickness, but it felt like every single cell in my body was under attack. And I remember talking to a customer that, he had seen me, throughout the whole pregnancy, and we ended up in a conversation where I was telling him how sick I've been all these times. And he's like, you would never know, you're so friendly. You just would never know.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's similar, you have to hide those things,
sure,
at certain times.
And it's what your mileage might vary. Let's say that. I don't advise that people who are, undergoing, physical trauma and whatever situation to say like you're less than for bowing out and saying, you know what, I need to not work the bar, because I needed to do that too.
Right.
I called off. I'm like, what am I going to do? I was hobbling to get ice and making like groaning noises every time I had to make an iced latte. I was like, you know what? I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Even though at the time I really, really needed to, because we needed to pay bills. But point is, yeah, well taken. You're such a champ, you know, through the pregnancy too, putting up with me as your boss.
Yes,
also.
He was a tough boss, but he was harder on me. I might have shared this in our Valentine's episode if we talked about it. He was definitely harder on me than everyone else.
Yeah, well, you know, here the thing is though that it's true, and I wouldn't deny it. You allow yourself a lot more leeway with those who you're very familiar with, and we've talked about this on the show too, because people who work with a spouse, or people who even have best friends that become business partners, this is a thing. I have clients who have described the exact same thing. You talk to your mom, your dad, your sister, brother, whatever, way differently than you do to your employees, and then your employees see it and they're just like, what in the world?
Right.
Like,
right.
Yeah, so
Yes.
been there, done that. But here we are.
We are having our episode together. Okay, next question. What challenge still lies ahead that you haven't mastered yet?
Well, gosh, I don't know. There might be many things that come up. I don't know. I think the most challenging things are balancing life with consistency. You have something that's consistent like a podcast, but then you have unpredictable life around you.
Right.
So I'd say, who knows, like, you know, it might be that, you know, in the future we have to move somewhere, and that's hard to keep up, you know, with the podcast in that time. But also growing the podcast as a challenge is another big thing. Mm-hmm. Not just keeping it where it is, because, you know, 5 years from now we're going to have another 560 episodes. Mm-hmm. It's a huge catalog of content, and it freaks me out, to be honest. You know, the question is what to do with it. And so creating a more accessible library of content for people is the biggest challenge in my estimation, because the whole point of Keys to the Shop was to make best practices that are worth listening to in lots of different areas related to coffee retail accessible to people so that they can use it to thrive in their business. Once you get past like 1,000 episodes, I'm pretty sure you're back to square one, and people are like, geez, I don't know where to start, and all that stuff. So how to iterate Keys to the Shop in the future is one of those things. So we'll see. You know, so before we wrap up here, you know, I want to ask you, because you've been witness to this since the beginning. You took a picture of me sitting in this chair, or whatever chair I had at the moment, at this desk when the first episode went out, and it was a momentous occasion. You know, it was, you know, definitely, you know, let's see how this goes moment. But then it's been 5 years of producing this show and seeing different things happen, like, you know, more episodes, taking on sponsors, doing consulting and things like that. So from your perspective, you're the one who sees everything that happens with Keys to the Shop. How has this last 5 years been?
Right. I mean, you know, like I said, I thought you were crazy. I didn't know if it was just going to be a phase or, you know, what it was going to look like, or a hobby. But I think I've probably been the most just shocked how well you have done. You know, this is probably just going to turn into a bragging moment.
Oh, geez.
But, you know, I've already spoken about his creativity. I'm just completely shocked that you never run out of ideas. And, you know, you just have displayed such tenacity in, you know, always making sure your episodes are out on time. You don't really, like, give yourself, you know, unnecessary breaks, you know, just, it's just been really neat to see you be such good follow through, I guess, is what I would say. And also another thing, this kind of just speaks to your personality in general, not necessarily about a podcast, but I have always felt like you just don't really have, there's something about you where you don't have fear, where other people do, or most people do, in terms of like, you know, you spoke recently at this brewery conference, and he sent me a video of the size of the room and the amount of chairs. And I mean, my jaw dropped, and I was like, you know, in my past, I have spoken in front of, you know, smaller crowds of people, and I do fine, but I am like scared to death, you know, and shaking the whole time. But you kind of just, you know, you might have felt a little afraid to do something like that, you know, but you just kind of embrace it. And when you speak at Coffee Fest, you know, you have no fear of any of that, and just putting yourself out here. I don't know. You have a boldness that I was attracted to when I first met you. And I'm just kind of been watching it be displayed, you know, and so I just think it's really neat. But overall, you know, I think it's funny how in the beginning our son was 3 years old and super loud, and we have a small house, and it was always so hard to get him to be quiet, you know, while Daddy was recording, you know. So now it's a little bit easier because he's 8 years old, but.
That was very stressful, because in the beginning years I was very much just like feeling out this thing, and it's easier this time. I mean, this year you feel your age in terms of like knowing what you're doing, feeling comfortable around deadlines, and even knowing the capacity of your microphone to ignore certain noises around it. But then I was like super sensitive. I was like, oh no, like there's going to be a knock at the door. The podcast's going to be ruined. Keys to the shop's going to crumble. You know, I don't know.
Or the neighbor mows the lawn.
The neighbor mows the lawn. Someone's got bass playing out there, and oh gosh, you know. But anyway, you know what? This might as well be a Valentine's Day episode, the way you're talking. But I'm embarrassed. But yeah, I would say you have shown equal tenacity in your support for Keys to the Shop over the course of these years. That all that stuff wouldn't be possible unless you put up with weird schedules, and just, you know, seeing this come to fruition was not just like, oh, it's just a hobby in the corner. It's a lot more involved than that, especially right off the bat. But your support in, you know, like talking to me about episodes and questions I have about content and stuff. There's a lot of stuff that I ask you about, like, oh, you know, like, I really don't know about this thing I want to say, or, you know, here's an outline of what I was thinking about for next week, or you're the sounding board for so much. And so you deserve a ton of credit for that. And I will also say, you say I don't have fear. My sweaty palms would disagree. Like when I was at the conference with that large room of people, like literally I had to put like hype up music on. I was like doing squats in the back to get the nervous energy out. I was just like, man, we're doing this, you know? And that's how I've decided to react to stress. 'Cause I used to have panic attacks, like legit panic attacks, like, dizzy, call the EMTs, that type of panic attack. And today I've been able to channel the anxiety and whatever kind of anxiety disorder I might possess into excitement. And so everybody has fear. Everyone. No one's truly fearless. It's just what you choose to do with it. So if anyone wants to look up Kelly McGonigal's TED talk on fear and like turning nervousness into excitement, it's really interesting. But yeah, it's interesting. Exactly. Yeah. So, the 5 years of just kind of exploring subjects and myself and the world of coffee, and it's really been interesting. We're closing in on 2 million downloads for the show, so we'll see what the future holds. So Yeah.
All right. Before everyone goes, I'm going to end with just some rapid fire fun questions. So let's see how this goes.
Okay.
Okay. First one. Did it take you a minute to get used to hearing your voice? Because everyone sounds different when you hear your recorded voice.
I probably have like 150 10-second recordings of myself. I've deleted them since then, of me just talking into a microphone. And I know we talked about this the other day, how I practiced in front of you, like doing a podcast, and I was like, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to say. And it sounded like garbage. It sounded monotone. You said
I was always like, you're too monotone.
Yeah. And I'm not the most verbally expressive, vocal variety. I'm not like Mr. Vocal Variety. I'm way more today, if you can believe it, than I used to be. But yeah, it was terrible. But then when it came time to do it,
yeah, it was fine.
It was fine. And I got used to the sound of my own voice. But when outside of podcasting do you really talk into to
yourself
cushions? Like, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. These are supposed to be rapid. Okay. What is your favorite drink outside of coffee?
Right now, it is the Rishi has these sparkling botanicals, and it is their saffron turmeric sparkling botanical. I would reach for that if I wanted a special drink outside of coffee.
Awesome. Where have you had the best latte and the best espresso?
Well, okay, not fair, first of all, because they're all different. They're all special in their own special way. So I will say the best milk drink that I've had, in this may be just viscerally in my memory, back in 2000. Maybe it was like 2000 or very, very early. Broadway Cafe in Kansas City. This was when I was first discovering specialty coffee. I didn't really know of anybody doing specialty coffee. And I stopped into Broadway Cafe just on a chance. I got a latte, or I think it might have been a cappuccino, small drink. And a half mile down the road, I was drinking it, and I just turned around. I turned around because I had to go back and tell the baristas and whoever was working there how good it was.
Wow.
Like, yeah, I really needed to do that. Maybe that was because it was new. And since then, I've probably had drinks that are similar. I've had great shots and milk drinks from lots of different coffee shops in that time. But that was one of the most memorable for me.
That's awesome. What is something... This is going to be funny. What is something that you do that people would think you're crazy, including me?
Okay, so one is when I was a barista, I used to just eat pastries like the rest of the normal barista world, but I would also more recently take like sardines and cold soup into work and just eat that as a shift meal. And I would do it away from people. Okay, so don't hate me. I also didn't care about heating soup up, so eating cold food is not really that it's not a big deal to me. I know for you it drives you nuts.
Yes.
But speaking of cold, I have dabbled in not ice baths but cold showers, just for health benefits. So I do a lot of health regimens. I have a natural pharmacy in my bag. Whenever I travel with one bag, just a sling bag, no matter how long the trip is. But I always have a ton of supplements, oils, powders, and fun stuff like that just to maintain health. And so maybe I'm a little obsessive about that.
Yeah. Okay, this kind of goes along the same, lines. What is something that you're just kind of neurotic about?
I don't like to see things not at 90-degree angles. And I will rearrange my desks and in different spaces so that things are ordered from like highest to lowest, or put papers on top of papers. Like if I'm stacking papers, like on my desk right now, before I do work, what I would do is stack papers from biggest paper to smallest instead of whichever paper I want to work on first. Because it's more visually.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that, did you?
No.
Yeah. But so I'm fussing with my workplace. it's this, I don't know what it is. It just makes me feel good to have command of my space. You could call it some kind of like a Zen thing, or
I think OCD.
You know, Chris Deferio brings the CD part in there, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, crooked paintings drive me crazy, but outside of that, I don't think I've ever thought about things being at right angles.
Well, here's the thing. As a visual person, right? Everyone's visual, but for me, I visualize a lot, and so my imagination can be vivid for what I want an experience to be like. It's one of the benefits of being a consultant with that gift, I think, is to see how things could be, and then kind of dissect how to get those things in line, right? And so I try to do that with my space. That doesn't mean that my space is immaculate, because there's chaos all around me. We have a small house. We have a little boy, and not enough time in the day for me to like right angle my life.
Right.
I have plants. Plants don't obey those laws.
Right.
But there's other things that I just like right now. I adjust my phone as I'm speaking, like right now, so that the base is in line with my desk. And that's just the thing I do.
Very interesting. I'm sure some of your listeners probably are similar.
Yeah. If you're listening right now and you think I'm nuts, you know what? Look at your desk wherever you are, put something at a right angle, at a 90-degree angle, and then tell me you don't feel better.
And if you totally are the same, send him an email just to support him.
Yeah, or tag me on Instagram with a picture of your organized desk, please.
At right angles. That's awesome. All right. Well, that wasn't super rapid, but, we've already talked about how verbose he is, but that wraps it up. Is there anything else you want to add to your listeners?
I feel like there's always something else I want
to
add.
Always.
Well, yeah, 5 years of Keys to the Shop. Not only a huge thanks to you, Lynnsy, for your support, but to all of you for listening to the show, for sharing it. And I try not to get emotional, but it really is incredible to be able to have done this for this long and talk to so many people and know that the show has contributed to people's lives in a positive way. And so I just would add thank you all. And here's to another 5 years of Keys to the Shop.
And thanks for letting me host again.
Of course.
Maybe I can come back in 10 years.
10 years. Sooner
if
than
you'll
that.
have me.
Yeah. Okay, everybody. Well, I hope that you enjoyed that and you learned a little bit about, what goes on behind the scenes at running a coffee podcast in a small family here in Kentucky. That's, the long and short of it. And I hope that today's episode was encouraging to you and fun. There's so much more to explore in the world of coffee. And, I don't know what the next 5 years looks like, but like I said when I started this podcast, I'm going to keep doing this. We'll see what happens. I have a feeling it's going to be wonderful. Now, of course, if you have any questions, comments, or feedback from me about this episode or any episode of Keys to the Shop, feel free to reach out. Chris@keystotheshop.com is where you can reach me. And also, speaking of anniversaries, this year is the 30th anniversary of Coffee Fest trade shows. So we give a big round of applause for Coffee Fest for 3 decades of producing what I think is probably the best event you can go to. If you're looking to enrich your professional life or the lives of your staff, to learn how to build a thriving coffee shop business. And we're talking about lectures, workshops, trainings, competitions, a trade show floor, networking with like-minded professionals. It's all highly accessible, and I would encourage you to look into going to one of these events in 2022 in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and in Seattle this year. Go to coffeefest.com to learn more and register you and your team today. Again, if you're looking for a great event to go to run a thriving coffee business, then you need to go to Coffee Fest. Go to coffeefest.com to learn more. And with that is the end of our show today. Thank you again, everybody, for tuning in. A happy new year to all of you. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.